My parents told me, "We're giving the family business to your brother because he has a traditional family." I said, "Fine." I was the one holding all the intellectual property licenses. I revoked them the day he took over. The business became a shell overnight, and my brother is now sued by every client for breach of contract. Hey, Reddit. So my parents gave our family business to my brother because apparently having a wife and two kids makes you more qualified to run a software company than the person who actually built all the proprietary tech. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. And now my brother is drowning in lawsuits while I'm watching from my new office downtown. Let me explain how we got here. I'm 34, and I've been working in the family business since I graduated college 12 years ago. My dad started Anderson Tech Solutions back in the late 90s as a small consulting firm helping local businesses with their IT needs. Nothing fancy, just basic network setup, computer repair, that kind of thing. By the time I joined after college, they were doing okay, but nothing special. Maybe 15 employees, revenues around 2 million annually, competing with every other small IT shop in the greater metro area. Here's the thing though, I didn't just join the company to coast on my last name. I had a degree in computer science with a focus on machine learning and data analytics. I knew the consulting game was getting crowded, and we needed to differentiate ourselves, or we'd eventually get swallowed up by bigger firms or tech companies offering the same services for cheaper. So I spent my first 2 years learning every aspect of the business while developing something on the side, something that would change everything. I created a proprietary software suite specifically designed for mid-sized manufacturing companies. This wasn't some off-the-shelf solution you could buy anywhere. This was custom-built algorithms that could predict equipment failures, optimize production schedules, and integrate with basically any legacy system these companies were running. Manufacturing companies are notoriously behind on technology adoption. They're still running systems from the early 2000s because upgrading means shutting down production lines, retraining workers, potentially losing data. It's a nightmare. My software solved all of that. It could integrate with their ancient systems, extract and analyze data they didn't even know they were collecting, and provide actionable insights that saved them serious money. I basically lived in my condo's spare bedroom turned office for those 2 years. Weekends, evenings, anytime I wasn't actively working for the company. I'd come home from the office at 6, eat something quick, and code until midnight or later. My social life was non-existent. Dating was pretty much off the table because who wants to date a guy who cancels plans to debug algorithms? But I was building something real. I could see it coming together. The machine learning models were getting better at predictions. The integration modules were handling edge cases I hadn't even anticipated. The user interface was actually intuitive, which is rare for enterprise software. I knew this was going to work. I just needed to prove it. The first client I brought on board was almost accidental. I was doing basic IT maintenance for Henderson Manufacturing, and the plant manager was complaining about unexpected equipment breakdowns, costing them hundreds of thousands in lost production time. I mentioned I'd been working on something that might help. He was skeptical, but desperate enough to give it a shot. Within 3 months, they reduced unplanned downtime by 47%. 47%. The plant manager couldn't shut up about it. He told his buddy who ran another manufacturing company 2 states over. That guy called us. Then another. Then another. Word spreads fast in manufacturing circles when someone finds something that actually works. I remember the second client meeting vividly. The CEO walked in expecting another tech bro trying to sell him cloud solutions he didn't need. I showed him Henderson's actual data, not projections or estimates. Real numbers showing reduced downtime, cost savings, ROI calculations. His skepticism melted in about 15 minutes. By the end of the meeting, he was asking when we could start implementation. The third client came from a trade show. I'd set up a booth mostly to network and maybe generate a few leads. Instead, I ended up with a line of plant managers and operations directors wanting demos. I literally ran out of business cards. My dad was at the same trade show in a different hall, handing out brochures for basic IT services to mostly empty aisles. I had people waiting 30 minutes just to talk to me about the software. That's when I realized we had something special. This wasn't just a good product. This was solving a problem that an entire industry had been struggling with for decades. The demand was there. The solution worked. All I had to do was scale it. Over the next 4 years, I grew that side of the business from 0 to 12 million in annual revenue. We went from 15 employees to 65. We opened offices in 3 other states. My software became the main revenue driver for Anderson Tech Solutions. The old IT consulting stuff still existed, but it was maybe 20% of total revenue now. Everything else was my proprietary manufacturing optimization suite and the consulting services that came with it. And here's the critical part that becomes important later. I made damn sure every single patent, copyright, and licensing agreement for that software was in my name personally, not the company's name. Mine. My dad thought this was smart, actually. He said it showed entrepreneurial thinking and that I should protect my intellectual property. He signed off on the arrangement where I licensed the software to Anderson Tech Solutions for a very favorable rate. Basically, I charged the company almost nothing to use software that was generating millions in revenue. I did this because I trusted my family. I thought we were building something together. I believed that my contributions would be recognized and rewarded appropriately. I was the technical genius behind our success, and my dad handled the business operations. It worked perfectly. Or so I thought. My younger brother Jordan is 3 years younger than me. He joined the company 5 years ago after bouncing around between various sales jobs. Jordan has that classic sales guy personality. Charming, outgoing, great at golf, always knows what to say to make people feel good. He's also completely useless when it comes to anything technical. The guy can barely use Excel beyond basic formulas. My dad put Jordan in charge of business development, which basically meant taking clients to lunch and playing golf. And look, I'm not saying that stuff isn't important. Relationships matter in business. But Jordan acted like he was the reason we were successful. He'd tell people at family gatherings that he'd built relationships with key accounts, while conveniently forgetting to mention that those accounts only existed because my software solved problems they'd been struggling with for years. I watched this dynamic develop over time, and it started eating at me. Jordan would schedule a lunch with a client I'd spent 3 months implementing a complex solution for. He'd come back talking about how he'd strengthened the relationship and ensured client satisfaction. Meanwhile, I was the one who'd spent weekends debugging integration issues, who'd taken midnight calls when their systems had problems, who'd customized features to meet their specific needs. But Jordan got credit for the relationship because he was the one drinking craft cocktails with them at expensive restaurants. Never mind that the only reason they were happy enough to have those lunches was because my software was saving them millions. In Jordan's version of events, the software was just a product. He was the relationship builder, the real value add. This came to a head at one company meeting where my dad was praising Jordan for securing a major contract renewal. I pointed out that the client had literally told me the previous week they were renewing because our software was irreplaceable for their operations. Jordan got defensive and said that's because he'd built such a strong relationship that they trusted us. I asked him to explain what the software actually did for that client. He gave some vague answer about optimization and efficiency. The client was using our predictive maintenance module to prevent critical failures in their injection molding equipment. Jordan didn't even know what injection molding was. Jordan got married 6 years ago to this woman named Ashley, who came from old money. Her family owns a bunch of commercial real estate around the city. They had their first kid 3 years ago, then another one 2 years ago. Perfect little family. House in the suburbs with the white picket fence, golden retriever, membership at the country club, the whole package. Meanwhile, I'm single. I dated here and there, but nothing serious. I was focused on growing the business, improving the software, managing our technical team. I had a condo downtown, drove a practical sedan, and spent most of my free time either working or going to conferences to stay current on technology trends. Not exactly the lifestyle that screams family man. My parents, especially my mom, started making comments about this around 3 years ago. Little hints about how it would be nice to have more grandchildren. Questions about why I wasn't settling down. Comparisons between Jordan's stable family life and my bachelor lifestyle. I brushed it off because I figured it was just typical parent stuff. They want their kids to be happy and have families. Whatever. But the comments got more frequent and more pointed. My mom would say things like, Jordan just seems more settled, or there's something to be said for a man who prioritizes family. My dad started talking about legacy and building something to pass down to the next generation. I still didn't really connect the dots because I was busy actually running the technical side of the business that generated 90% of our revenue. About 8 months ago, my dad asked me to have lunch with him. Just the two of us, which was unusual. We normally had weekly management meetings where we discussed business strategy, but one-on-one lunches weren't really our thing. I figured he wanted to talk about expanding into new markets, or maybe finally giving me a title that reflected my actual contributions to the company. We sat down at this steakhouse he likes, ordered food, made small talk. Then he got this serious look on his face and said, we needed to talk about succession planning. I'm thinking, great. Finally, we're going to formalize what everyone already knows. I'm the technical brains behind the company's success. I should be CEO eventually, or at minimum a named partner with significant equity. That's not where the conversation went. My dad started talking about how he's getting older, how he wants to start thinking about retirement in the next few years, how it's important that the business stays in the family. All stuff I agreed with. Then he said he'd been thinking a lot about who should take over when he steps back. I literally started to say, well, obviously, when he cut me off. He said he thought Jordan should be the one to take over as CEO and majority owner of the company. I sat there for a solid 10 seconds just processing what I'd heard. Jordan, the guy who couldn't explain what our software actually does if his life depended on it. The guy whose main contribution to the company was playing golf and taking clients to expensive dinners. That Jordan. I asked my dad if he was serious. He got defensive immediately, which told me he knew this was problematic. He started rattling off reasons. Jordan has a family to support. Jordan has shown great relationship building skills. Jordan represents the kind of stable, traditional values that clients appreciate. Jordan has been learning the business and is ready for more responsibility. I pointed out the obvious. I built the software that generates almost all our revenue. I manage the technical team. I handle all our major implementation projects. I'm the one clients actually want to talk to when they have real problems, because Jordan doesn't understand the product well enough to help them. By any objective measure, I'm more qualified to run this company. My dad got that look he gets when he's made up his mind and doesn't want to hear arguments. He said that's exactly the problem. I'm too focused on the technical side. Running a company requires people skills, relationship management, strategic thinking beyond just the product. Jordan has those skills. I'm invaluable on the technical side, and I'd obviously stay on in a senior technical role with great compensation. But leadership? That requires someone like Jordan. I asked if this had anything to do with Jordan having kids and being married. My dad hesitated, which was all the answer I needed. He eventually said that yes, Jordan's family situation did factor into his thinking. The company represents our family legacy, and Jordan has a family to pass it on to. I'm just one person. Jordan is building something bigger. I wish I could say I exploded right there in the restaurant, flipped the table, called my dad every name in the book, stormed out dramatically, but I didn't. I just sat there feeling like someone had punched me in the stomach. 12 years of work, building something from nothing, growing the company by 6 times. And I was being passed over because my brother managed to get married and reproduce. I asked what Jordan would actually own. My dad said the plan was to transfer 70% of company equity to Jordan, 20% to me, and my parents would keep 10%. Jordan would be CEO. I'd be CTO with a seat on the board, 20%. For building the entire foundation of what made the company valuable, for creating the intellectual property that generated millions, for managing 60% of the employees, 20%. I asked when this was happening. My dad said they wanted to start transitioning over the next 6 months, with Jordan officially taking over as CEO in a year. He wanted to tell me first. Then we'd announce it to Jordan, then to the company, then to clients. I finished my lunch, didn't make a scene, told my dad I needed time to process this. He looked relieved that I wasn't fighting him on it. Probably thought I'd come around once I had time to think about how fair his plan was. I went back to my condo that night and pulled out every contract, patent filing, and licensing agreement I had for the software. I read through them carefully. Every single piece of intellectual property that made Anderson Tech Solutions profitable was licensed to the company by me personally. The licensing agreements were renewable annually. I'd always just automatically renewed them, because why wouldn't I? It was my family's company, but the agreements were clear. I owned the IP. The company licensed it from me, and I had the right to revoke those licenses with 90 days' notice. I didn't make any immediate decisions. I spent the next week just watching how things worked at the office with fresh eyes. Jordan would come in around 9, spend an hour drinking coffee and catching up with people, maybe take a client call, then head out for a 2-hour lunch. He'd come back around 2, do some emails, maybe sit in on a meeting he barely contributed to, then leave by 4 to get home for dinner with the family. Meanwhile, I was in before 8, stayed until 7 or 8 most nights, handled escalations from clients, worked with our development team on product improvements, and actually kept the company running. But sure, Jordan was ready to be CEO because he could talk about golf handicaps and had mastered the art of looking busy while doing nothing. I talked to a few people outside the company, an old professor who'd become a mentor, a buddy from grad school who ran his own tech startup, a patent attorney I'd worked with on some of my filings. I laid out the situation without telling them what I was considering, just asked their thoughts. Every single one of them said the same thing. If the IP is in your name and you're being pushed out, you have leverage. Use it. Don't let family guilt trick you into giving away what you built. The announcement came 3 weeks after my lunch with Dad. Family meeting at my parents' house on a Sunday. Jordan and Ashley were there with the kids. My parents sat everyone down in the living room, and my dad gave this whole speech about the future of the company, about legacy, about family. Then he announced that Jordan would be taking over as CEO and majority owner. Jordan acted surprised, but in that way that told me he absolutely knew this was coming. Ashley got all teary and hugged my mom. The kids didn't care because they're like 5 and 3 years old and just wanted to know if there was dessert. Everyone looked at me like I should be excited for my brother. I congratulated Jordan, shook his hand, said all the right things. My mom pulled me aside later and thanked me for being so mature about this. She said she knew it might be hard for me, but this was the right decision for the family. Jordan needed this opportunity. I was already successful in my own right. Blah, blah, blah. I went home and drafted a letter. The letter was addressed to Anderson Tech Solutions. Attention, the CEO. I didn't even put my dad's name on it. Just CEO. Very professional, very official. The letter stated that per the licensing agreement stated various dates, I was providing 90 days notice of my intent to revoke all licenses for the proprietary software, algorithms, and associated intellectual property currently licensed to Anderson Tech Solutions. After the 90-day period, the company would no longer have rights to use, modify, or distribute any of my IP. I also included a list of what exactly this IP included: the manufacturing optimization software that generated most of our revenue, the integration tools that made it work with legacy systems, the predictive algorithms that were our main competitive advantage, the client portal that all our customers used, the reporting dashboards, every custom module we developed for specific industries, all of it. I sent the letter via certified mail and email to the company's official business address, carbon copied to my dad's personal email and Jordan's company email. Sent it on a Friday afternoon because I'm not a complete monster. At least they'd have the weekend to process it before clients started calling on Monday. Then I sent individual emails to each of our major clients. Very professional, very brief, just informing them that I wanted to reach out personally to let them know about some upcoming changes. Mentioned that I would no longer be affiliated with Anderson Tech Solutions as of date 90 days out. Didn't mention the IP situation yet. Just planted the seed that something was changing. The phone call started Saturday morning. My dad called first. I sent it to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. He called 6 more times before finally leaving a message. His voice was shaking. He said we needed to talk immediately. This couldn't be real. I couldn't do this to the family. Call him back now. Jordan called next. He was angry. Started yelling about how I was being petty and vindictive, and this was about me being jealous that he got the company. I let him vent for about 30 seconds, then hung up. He called back immediately. I blocked his number. My mom called crying. Said I was tearing the family apart. How could I do this to my brother? To my father? They'd given me everything. This was how I repaid them? I actually answered that one. Told her very calmly that they decided to give Jordan the company. That was their choice. But the intellectual property was mine, and I got to decide what to do with it. If Jordan wanted to run a company, he could run a company. Just not one built on my work. She said I was being cruel. I said I was being fair. I'd spent 12 years building something valuable, and they decided it should belong to Jordan because he managed to get married and have kids. That was their decision. This was mine. More calls. From my dad's attorney. From Jordan. From Ashley's father, who apparently thought his money gave him a say in our family business. I ignored all of them. I'd said what I needed to say in the letter. 90 days. That's what the licensing agreement stipulated, and that's what they were getting. Monday morning, I got to the office early. Most of the technical team reported directly to me anyway. I called a meeting with all of them, told them straight up what was happening. I was leaving in 90 days. The IP was mine, not the company's. I'd be starting my own firm, and I wanted to know who was interested in coming with me. Out of the 28 people on the technical team, 24 said yes immediately. The other 4 wanted to think about it, which was fair. These were people with families, mortgages, lives. I told them I understood, and they should do what's best for them. But I'd be offering competitive salaries, better benefits, and actual equity in the new company. Not 20% while doing 80% of the work. Real equity. My dad showed up at the office around 10. Stormed into my office without knocking. Started yelling about how I was destroying everything he'd built. I let him finish, then very calmly pointed out that he'd built a small IT consulting firm that was struggling to compete. I'd built the software platform that made us profitable. There was a difference. He said the company would sue me. I smiled and asked him to please do that. I'd enjoy explaining in court how he'd signed contracts giving me full ownership of the IP, how I'd licensed it to the company as a favor, and how those licenses were always intended to be terminable. I'd also enjoy discovery where we'd look at what percentage of company revenue came from my IP versus Jordan's golf games. He said I'd never work in this industry again. He'd make sure of it. I laughed at that. Told him that every single one of our major clients had my personal contact information. They knew who actually solved their problems. They knew who built the software they depended on. If he wanted to test whether they were more loyal to the Anderson family name or to the person who saved them millions of dollars annually, we could run that experiment. Jordan tried a different approach. Came to my condo that evening. Showed up with flowers and this whole speech prepared about how we were brothers, how family was more important than business, how we could work this out. I told him he was right. Family is important. That's why it hurt so much when Dad decided his family was more valuable than mine, just because he'd gotten married. Jordan said it wasn't like that. I was still family. I'd still have a role in the company. I cut him off and told him to stop. The decision was made. I was leaving. The IP was coming with me. He could run whatever was left, which would be a basic IT consulting firm competing with 1,000 other companies offering the same services. He got angry then, said I was being selfish, that I was hurting Mom and Dad, that I was damaging his kid's future. I asked him if he'd considered any of that when he accepted a company built on my work, when he was okay with getting 70% equity for doing 20% of the value creation. Somehow he didn't have answers for that. The 90 days moved fast. I set up my new company, filed all the paperwork, leased office space in a better part of downtown, hired the technical team members who decided to come with me, which ended up being all 28 of them once I shared the full equity and compensation structure. Started reaching out to clients to let them know about the transition. Setting up the new company was almost therapeutic. I finally got to build something exactly the way I wanted. No compromises. No family politics. Just pure business decisions based on what made sense. I structured the equity so that key team members got real ownership, not token shares. I set up a flat management structure where good ideas mattered more than tenure. I created a culture where technical excellence was valued as much as business development. The office space I leased was in a renovated industrial building. High ceilings, exposed brick, huge windows. The kind of space that tech companies use to attract talent. I set up proper workstations for the development team. A real server room with actual cooling and backup systems instead of the cobbled-together setup we'd had at Anderson Tech. Conference rooms with good video equipment for client calls. A kitchen that wasn't just an ancient coffee maker and a mini fridge. My team was pumped. They'd been working in Anderson Tech's cramped offices with outdated equipment and no room to grow. Now they had space, resources, and actual career paths. Several of them told me they'd been thinking about leaving anyway. The only reason they'd stayed was loyalty to me personally, not to the company. The client conversations were interesting. I approached each one individually, usually over video calls, since many were in different states. I'd explain that I was starting my own firm, that the entire technical team was coming with me, and that we'd be offering the same software and service they were currently receiving. Same or better quality. Similar pricing. More direct access to the technical team since we'd be smaller and more focused. Most of them were relieved honestly. They'd been hearing rumors about changes at Anderson Tech. Some had noticed that Jordan was now more involved in their accounts and were concerned because he clearly didn't understand their technical needs. When I offered them continuity with the people who actually knew their systems and had built their solutions, it was an easy decision. Here's where it got interesting. Our licensing agreements with clients were tied to Anderson Tech Solutions as a company, but the implementation and service agreements referenced the specific software and technical team. When I offered clients the option to transition their contracts to my new company with the same software, same team, and same service level. At similar pricing, most of them jumped at it. Not all of them. Some had loyalty to my dad or felt weird about the family drama. But about 70% of our client base decided to move their contracts to my new firm. They were getting the same thing they'd been getting, just with a different company name on the invoice. Anderson Tech Solutions tried to sue them for breach of contract. That went nowhere because the client's attorneys pointed out that the contracts guaranteed access to specific software and specific service levels. When Anderson Tech could no longer provide that software or service, because I owned the IP and I'd taken the technical team, the clients had grounds to terminate for non-performance. My dad tried to hire new developers to recreate the software. That's technically legal since you can't copyright ideas, only specific implementation. But here's the thing about complex enterprise software. It's not just about writing code. It's about understanding the specific problems you're solving, The edge cases, the integration challenges. It's about years of iterative improvements based on real-world usage. They hired a development team, spent 6 months trying to build something comparable. What they produced was basically a worse version of what I'd built 5 years earlier. It crashed constantly. It couldn't handle the same data volumes. It was missing critical features. Clients who'd stayed with Anderson Tech started calling them asking when the software would work properly again. I heard through the grapevine what was happening over there. The new development team my dad hired didn't understand manufacturing processes. They were good coders, but they'd never worked in industrial settings. They didn't know why certain features mattered or how the software was actually being used day to day. They were building based on spec documents Jordan tried to write, which was like asking someone who'd never driven a car to design an engine. One client told me directly what happened. Anderson Tech deployed an update to their hastily rebuilt software that crashed their entire production monitoring system, took down 3 production lines for 6 hours, cost them over $200,000 in lost production. When the client called Jordan demanding to know what happened, he couldn't explain the technical issue. He literally put one of the new developers on the phone, who admitted they were still working out some bugs. Some bugs. They deployed untested code to a production environment at a manufacturing facility. That's not bugs. That's malpractice. Another client had their data corrupted by the new system. Years of production data, quality metrics, maintenance records, just gone. The backup systems didn't work properly because the new developers hadn't implemented them correctly. The client lost data they needed for regulatory compliance in their industry. That's the kind of thing that gets companies shut down by regulators. Jordan, as CEO, started making promises he couldn't keep, told clients the new version would be ready soon, told them it would be better than what they'd had before, signed contracts guaranteeing specific performance metrics that his development team had no chance of hitting. That's when the lawsuit started. Manufacturing companies don't mess around. When you promise them software that will reduce downtime and optimize production, then deliver something that crashes and costs them money and lost productivity, they sue. Especially when they have contracts with specific performance guarantees that you're not meeting. First lawsuit came from Henderson Manufacturing, ironically the first client I'd ever brought on board. They sued for breach of contract, seeking damages for lost productivity and the cost of having to implement a different solution. They calculated their damages at just over $3 million. Then Norton Industries filed. They were seeking $4.2 million. Then Cascade Manufacturing, $6.8 million. Within 6 months of Jordan officially taking over as CEO, Anderson Tech Solutions was facing 14 separate lawsuits, totaling just over $40 million in claimed damages. The company's entire annual revenue before I left had been around $12 million. They were being sued for more than 3 times their annual revenue. Jordan tried to blame me in the legal filings, said I'd sabotaged the company, that I'd acted in bad faith, that I'd stolen clients. His attorneys actually tried to argue that my licensing agreements were invalid because of some family law technicality. That lasted exactly 1 hearing before the judge told them to come back with actual legal arguments instead of feelings. Insurance didn't cover most of it, because Jordan had made fraudulent claims about the software capabilities that voided coverage. The company had maybe $2 million in liquid assets. Even if they sold everything, they couldn't come close to covering the lawsuit exposure. 3 months into the lawsuit nightmare, my dad showed up at my new office. Didn't call ahead, just walked into the reception area and asked to see me. My assistant buzzed me and I almost said no, but curiosity won. He looked like he'd aged 5 years and 8 months. Sat down across from my desk without being invited. Started talking about how we needed to work together to fix this, how it was still a family business and family helps family, how Jordan was in over his head and needed my help. I asked him what he was offering. He said if I came back, we could restructure. Give me more equity, maybe 40% instead of 20. Co-CEOs with Jordan. We'd figure it out together. I laughed. Told him he was still missing the point. I didn't want equity in a failing company being sued into oblivion. I had my own company now. One that didn't have $40 million in lawsuit exposure. One where I owned the IP instead of licensing it. One where I didn't have to share credit with someone who couldn't even explain what the product did. He got angry then. Said I was being vindictive. That I'd destroyed his life's work out of spite. That he'd given me everything. And this was how I repaid him. I pulled up the original emails from 18 months ago on my screen. Turned the monitor so he could see them. The ones where he explained that Jordan deserved to be CEO because of his traditional family and leadership qualities. Where he said I was invaluable on the technical side, but not leadership material. Where he offered me 20% equity for building the entire foundation of the company's value. Asked him if he'd have made the same decision if he could do it over. If he still thought Jordan's wife and kids made him more qualified than me. If he still thought 20% was fair. He didn't answer. Just stood up and walked out. That was 4 months ago. Haven't heard from him since. Jordan's situation got worse. 2 of the lawsuits went to trial because he refused to settle. Bad move. Juries don't like tech CEOs who promise things they can't deliver and then blame everyone else when it goes wrong. First verdict came back against Anderson Tech for the full amount plus punitive damages. 8.4 million total. Second trial lasted 3 days. The plaintiff's attorney brought in their former plant manager to testify about how Anderson Tech's software failure had cascaded into a safety incident. No one got hurt, but they'd had to shut down an entire facility for emergency inspections. That jury awarded them $12 million. The bankruptcy filing came 2 weeks later. Chapter 7, not even Chapter 11. There was nothing to reorganize. The company was a shell. No IP, no technical team, no viable product, and more debt than assets. The filing listed my dad and Jordan as primary creditors because they'd been personally guaranteeing some of the company debt. They stood to lose their houses. My mom called me after the filing. First time we'd spoken in over a year. She was crying. Said they were going to lose everything. That they needed help. That surely I had enough success now that I could help my family. I asked her if she remembered telling me I was being dramatic when I pointed out the favoritism growing up. If she remembered saying Jordan deserved the Tesla more because college was harder for him. If she remembered calling me selfish for not paying for his drunk driving accident. She said that was different. That was in the past. This was about helping family in crisis. I told her the number to my business line and said if they wanted to hire my consulting firm, my rates were $200 an hour with a $10,000 retainer. Then I hung up. Jordan tried one more approach. Showed up at my condo building and convinced the doorman to let him up. Knocked on my door at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. When I opened it, he looked wrecked. Hadn't shaved in days. Clothes looked slept in. He asked if we could talk. I let him in. He sat on my couch and started explaining how bad things were. The lawsuits, the bankruptcy. Ashley had taken the kids to her parents' house because they were going to lose their home. He couldn't find another job because his entire CEO tenure was a publicly documented disaster. He was applying to sales positions and getting rejected. Then he asked if there was any way I'd consider hiring him. Not in management, just sales. He'd work his way back up. He just needed a chance. I asked him if he understood why he was in this position. Really understood. Not the surface level stuff about the software being gone, but the actual reasons. He said he knew he wasn't as technical as me, that he should have listened when I tried to explain how the software worked, that he'd relied too much on the development team Dad hired, and they weren't as good as mine. I told him he still didn't get it. The problem wasn't that he wasn't technical. The problem was, he took something he didn't build, didn't understand, and couldn't maintain, then acted like he deserved it more than the person who created it. He made promises he couldn't keep because he didn't understand what he was promising. He blamed others for his failures instead of admitting he was unqualified for the job. He sat there for a minute, then asked if that was a no on the job. I said, yeah, that was a no. I needed people who brought value, not people who needed jobs because they destroyed their last company through incompetence. He left. I heard through mutual industry contacts that he ended up taking a job at a call center doing outbound sales for business insurance, making about $40,000 a year. His wife divorced him 6 months later, took the kids and moved back to her parents' estate. He's living in a studio apartment and driving a 10-year-old sedan. My dad lost the house. He and my mom moved into a small condo in a retirement community. He had to dip into his retirement accounts to settle some of the personal guarantees on company debt. He's doing part-time consulting now, trying to rebuild savings, mostly for companies that don't know about the Anderson Tech disaster. Meanwhile, my company crossed $30 million in revenue last year. We've expanded into 2 new product verticals. I've got 80 employees now. We're being approached by private equity firms interested in buying a stake, but I'm not selling. Why would I give up control of something I built? Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true. My parents told me, your sister needs your college fund because she's pregnant. You can work your way through school. It builds character. I withdrew the entire fund and moved out overnight. 5 years later, they called begging for help. Because sister drained their retirement, I sent them a coupon for character building classes and blocked the number. Hey Reddit, ever been the responsible kid who did everything right, only to watch your screw-up sibling get rewarded for doing everything wrong? Yeah, that was my entire childhood. But when my parents tried to steal my college fund to bail out my pregnant sister, I taught them a lesson in consequences they'll never forget. Buckle up, because this gets satisfying. So I'm Riley, 23 male, and I've got a sister named Ashley, 26 female, who's been the golden child since the day she learned to fake cry on command. I'm talking Olympic-level manipulation skills from the age of 5. Kid could turn on the waterworks faster than you could say, "It's not fair." And suddenly I'd be the bad guy for existing. Growing up, the favoritism was so obvious, it would have made a sitcom writer blush. Ashley wanted dance lessons? Mom immediately signed her up for the most expensive studio in town, bought her 3 different leotards, and attended every single recital like she was watching prima ballerinas at Lincoln Center. I asked for guitar lessons once and got told, maybe next year. A next year that somehow stretched into never. When Ashley was 16, she crashed Mom's car into a mailbox because she was texting her boyfriend while driving. You know what my parents said? "These things happen, sweetie. That's what insurance is for." I came home 10 minutes past curfew from my shift at the auto shop, where I worked weekends, and got grounded for 2 weeks for being irresponsible and disrespectful. The double standards were absolutely insane. Ashley would bail on family dinners to hang out with friends, and it was fine because she's so popular, we should be proud. I'd skip one Sunday dinner because I had to cover someone's shift at work, and suddenly I was abandoning the family and didn't understand priorities. Here's the thing, though. I figured out pretty early that complaining about the favoritism just made me look petty. So I kept my head down, worked hard, and became the kid who didn't need anything from anyone. Got straight A's without help, worked part-time jobs since I was 15, saved every penny, learned that self-reliance was the only reliable thing in life. My parents loved telling people about their 2 completely different kids. Ashley was the social butterfly who lit up every room. Translation: she partied constantly and barely passed her classes. I was the serious one who was so focused on school. Translation: I had my head screwed on straight and actually gave a crap about my future. The funny part? They said it like it was just a personality difference, not a direct result of how they'd raised us. Ashley never learned consequences because she never faced any. I learned consequences were inevitable, so I might as well stay ahead of them. By senior year of high school, our paths were pretty set. Ashley was squeaking by with C's and D's, skipping class to hang out with her burnout boyfriend Corey. Yes, that's his real name. And yes, he was exactly what you're picturing. I was pulling a 3.9 GPA while working 20 hours a week at Henderson's Auto Repair. The shop owner, Mr. Henderson, was this gruff 60-something Vietnam vet who ran the place like a military operation. He scared most of the high school kids who tried to work there. But I loved it. No BS, no excuses. You either did the work right, or you did it again until you got it right. "You're one of the good ones," he'd tell me while we were replacing brake pads or rotating tires. "Most kids your age can't show up on time, let alone actually work." Coming from him, that was basically a hug. The money I made there went straight into my college fund. Well, not straight. First it went into my bank account, then I'd transfer it to the 529 college savings plan my grandfather had set up for me when I was born. See, Grandpa Jim was the only one in the family who saw through my parents' BS. He was my mom's dad, this retired engineer who believed in rewarding actual effort instead of potential. When I was born, he opened a college fund in my name. Every birthday and Christmas, instead of toys, he'd deposit money into it. "Your parents mean well," he told me once when I was about 14, "but they confuse helping with enabling. You're going to need this when the time comes." He was right. By the time I graduated high school, between Grandpa's contributions and my own deposits from work, that fund had about $42,000 in it. Not enough to cover 4 years at a fancy private school, but enough to get me through a state university without drowning in debt. I'd been accepted to state university with a partial academic scholarship. Between the scholarship, my college fund, and working part-time, I'd be able to graduate debt-free if I was careful. That was the plan. That was always the plan. Ashley's plan, on the other hand, seemed to involve failing community college after 1 semester, and then working a string of retail jobs she'd quit whenever she got bored. Last I'd heard, she was working at some boutique in the mall, mostly so she could use her employee discount. But here's where things get interesting. About 3 weeks before I was supposed to leave for college, Ashley shows up at a family dinner with Corey in tow, looking nervous as hell. Mom's making pot roast, Dad's pretending to care about the baseball game on TV, and I'm just trying to eat my food in peace before my evening shift. Ashley clears her throat like she's about to announce she won the lottery. "So, we have some news." The table goes quiet. Even Dad mutes the TV. "We're pregnant!" Ashley squeals, grabbing Corey's hand like they'd just gotten engaged to royalty, instead of knocked up at 26 and 27 respectively. Mom's face does this weird thing where she tries to look happy and horrified at the same time. Dad just stares at his pot roast like it might have answers. I keep eating because, honestly, I saw this coming from a mile away. That's wonderful, honey, Mom finally manages, her voice hitting that high-pitched tone she gets when she's trying to convince herself of something. This is such a blessing. Right, honey? She kicks Dad under the table. Yeah, blessing. Great. Dad's still processing. You can practically see the calculator running behind his eyes, tallying up how much this is about to cost him. Corey, to his credit, looks appropriately terrified. We're really excited, he says, voice cracking slightly. It's gonna be great. I'm sitting there thinking about how Corey works at a cell phone kiosk in the mall, and Ashley can't hold a job for more than 4 months. These two can barely take care of themselves, let alone a whole human being. But pointing that out would make me the bad guy, so I keep my mouth shut and focus on my green beans. The dinner devolves into the logistics of it all. Where are they going to live? Ashley's apartment is a studio that barely fits one person. How are they going to afford baby stuff? Have they thought about health insurance? What about childcare when the baby comes? Every question gets the same vague answer. We'll figure it out. The universal phrase of people who have never figured anything out in their entire lives. I finish dinner, excuse myself, and head to work. While I'm rotating tires and doing oil changes, I'm thinking about how this is going to play out. I've seen this movie before. Ashley gets in over her head. My parents rush in to save her, and somehow I'm expected to be understanding and supportive while they drain their resources keeping her afloat. What I didn't expect was them coming from my college fund. 2 days later, my parents call a family meeting. In my house, family meetings were never about anything good. They were always about someone needing something from someone else. Usually me needing to be more understanding about whatever Ashley's latest drama was. I come home from my shift at Henderson's to find them sitting in the living room with those serious faces people put on when they're about to ask for a kidney. Riley, sit down, Dad says, gesturing to the armchair across from them. We need to talk about Ashley's situation. I sit, already knowing where this is going, but hoping I'm wrong. Mom jumps in with her rehearsed speech. Your sister is going through a very difficult time right now. She's going to be a mother, and that's a huge responsibility. She needs support, not judgment. Cool. When do I get support for busting my behind for the past 5 years? Dad takes over. The thing is, a baby is expensive. There's the hospital bills, the nursery furniture, diapers, formula, clothes, pediatrician visits. It adds up quickly. Okay, I say slowly, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Mom reaches over and pats my hand, like I'm about to receive devastating news. We've been thinking, and we believe the best solution is for Ashley to use your college fund to help get her settled with the baby. I just stare at them. Surely I misheard. Surely my parents did not just suggest stealing my college fund to pay for my sister's consequences. Excuse me? Now, before you get upset, Dad starts, doing that calm hand gesture like he's negotiating with a hostage taker. Hear us out. Ashley needs this money now. You, on the other hand, you're smart. You're capable. You can work your way through school like plenty of students do. It builds character. Builds character. They want to steal my college fund, and they're framing it as doing me a favor. That's my money, I say, my voice remarkably steady considering the rage building in my chest. Grandpa Jim set that up for me. I've been contributing to it since I was 15. That's for my education. Mom's eyes get watery. Her signature move. Riley, please don't be selfish. Your sister needs help. This is what family does. We help each other. Help each other? When exactly has Ashley helped me with anything? That's not the point, Dad says sharply. The point is, she needs this now. You can get student loans like everyone else. You'll be fine. The audacity is honestly impressive. They want me to take on debt for the next decade, so Ashley can furnish a nursery for a baby she made with her deadbeat boyfriend. No, I say simply. Mom looks shocked, like the word no isn't in her vocabulary when it comes to Ashley's needs. Riley, you're not thinking about this properly. Your sister is going to be a mother. A baby needs things. You're young. You have your whole life to pay off loans. And she's older than me. She's had her whole adult life to not get pregnant by someone who can barely afford his own rent. This isn't my problem to solve. Dad's face turns that special shade of red that means he's about to lose it. You will help your sister. We're your parents, and we're telling you this is what's happening. No, it's not. The fund is in your name, but we're your parents. We can access it on your behalf until you're 25, Mom says, and I can tell she's been practicing this line. Here's what they didn't know. Grandpa Jim was smarter than all of them combined. When he set up that 529 plan, he made sure that once I turned 18, only I could access it or make changes to it. The account was in my name, under my control, period. Actually, you can't, I tell them, standing up. The account transferred to my full control when I turned 18. You have zero access to it. The looks on their faces? Priceless. Mom's mouth literally drops open. Dad's confusion shifts rapidly to anger. That sneaky old, Dad starts, then catches himself. Your grandfather had no right to do that without discussing it with us. He had every right. It's not your money. It never was. It's mine. Riley, please. Mom's crying now, real tears this time. Your sister really needs this. Can't you find it in your heart to help family? I look at both of them. These people who spent my entire childhood showing me exactly where I ranked in their priorities, now asking me to sacrifice my future for the sister who never once had to sacrifice anything. Family helps each other, right? I say. So when I asked for help with guitar lessons, where was that family spirit? When I needed a ride to the district science fair, where were you? Oh, right, at Ashley's dance recital. When I made honor roll every single semester and you barely noticed, was that family helping each other? That's ancient history, Dad snaps. Stop being dramatic. No, it's a pattern. And I'm done being the one who has to understand, sacrifice, and bend so Ashley can keep making bad choices without consequences. I walk out of the living room and head straight to my room. Behind me, I hear Mom crying harder and Dad saying something about teaching me respect. I don't care anymore. I pack a bag with essentials, grab my laptop, and text my buddy Jordan. Can I crash at your place for a few days? Family drama. Always, man. Doors unlocked. Before I leave, I do 3 things. First, I log into my 529 account and verify that only I can access it. Second, I transfer every single penny out of that account and into a different savings account at a different bank, one my parents definitely don't know about. All $42,127.18 of it. Third, I write a note and leave it on the kitchen counter. Since Ashley needs the money so badly, and I can just work my way through school because it builds character, I've made it easier for everyone. The fund is gone. I withdrew every penny and moved it somewhere you can't touch it. I'll be paying for my own education with my own money, just like you wanted. Consider this my resignation from being the family's backup plan. Good luck with the baby. I grab my keys and walk out, leaving my phone behind so they can't blow it up with guilt trips. The drive to Jordan's apartment is almost meditative. I'm calm in a way that probably should worry me. No anger, no regret, just this clarity that I'd finally stopped playing a rigged game. Jordan takes one look at me and grabs 2 sodas from his fridge. What happened? I tell him everything. The dinner announcement, the family meeting, the demand for my college fund, all of it. Jordan's face goes through several expressions before settling on disgusted. Dude, they wanted you to give up your college money so your sister can buy baby cribs? Yep, that's messed up even for your family. Jordan and I had been friends since middle school. He'd witnessed enough family dinners and holidays to know exactly what my household dynamic was like. He called it emotional hostage-taking, which was probably the most accurate description I'd ever heard. So what's your plan? He asks. Finish the summer working at Henderson's? Start college in August like I planned. Never go back to that house again. You're really done? I'm really done. The next few days were peaceful. Jordan's place was a small 2-bedroom apartment he shared with our mutual friend Ryan. They'd both graduated the year before and were working full-time while taking classes at community college. It wasn't fancy, but it was drama-free, which made it better than any 5-star hotel. I bought a new phone with a new number. Only gave it to my employer, Jordan, Ryan, and a couple of other close friends who wouldn't leak it to my parents. Opened a new bank account at a completely different institution and transferred all my money there. Mr. Henderson noticed something was different when I came in for my shift that Monday. You all right, kid? You look like you slept in your car. Family stuff. I'm crashing with friends for a while. He studied me for a long moment. Henderson had this way of reading people that probably came from his military days. Your parents giving you trouble about school? Something like that. He nodded slowly. When I got back from Vietnam, my old man wanted me to take over his hardware store. Had my whole life planned out. I joined the army instead, and he didn't talk to me for 2 years. Did he ever come around? Eventually. Took him a while to realize I wasn't asking permission to live my life. He clapped me on the shoulder. Sometimes the best thing you can do for family is show them you're not their property. Now get to work. Those brake pads aren't going to replace themselves. Working kept me sane. Between my shifts at Henderson's and picking up odd jobs fixing cars for people in the neighborhood, I was banking serious money. By the end of summer, I'd saved another $6,000 on top of my college fund. Not bad for 3 months. I found out through Jordan's sister, who was friends with Ashley on social media, that my parents were losing their minds trying to find me. They'd gone to Henderson's auto repair, but Mr. Henderson had told them I'd quit. I hadn't, and he didn't know where I'd gone. They'd tracked down a few of my friends, but everyone played dumb. Ashley apparently had a meltdown when she realized the college fund was actually gone. Posted some long rant on social media about selfish family members and being abandoned in her time of need. The comments were mostly her friends agreeing that I was horrible, mixed with a few people pointing out that maybe she should have thought about finances before getting pregnant. My mom tried calling every single number she had for me. They were all disconnected or belonged to people who had no idea where I was. Dad apparently threatened to report me as a missing person, but I was 18 and legally allowed to leave, so that went nowhere. The only person who knew the whole truth was Grandpa Jim. I'd driven out to his place one Saturday to explain everything. He lived about an hour away in this small house he'd built himself back in the 70s. I found him in his workshop, working on some kind of wooden birdhouse with his usual meticulous precision. Wondered when you'd show up, he said without looking up from his sanding. Your mother's called me 6 times this week asking if I knew where you were. What did you tell her? That you were an adult making adult decisions, and I wasn't your keeper. He finally looked up at me. They tried to take the college fund, didn't they? How did you? Because I know my daughter. Smart woman in a lot of ways, but she's got a blind spot the size of Texas when it comes to Ashley. Always has. He set down his sandpaper. You moved the money? Every penny. New bank, new account, completely separate. He smiled, and it was the first genuine approval I'd felt from anyone in my family in months. Good. I set that fund up for you because I knew you'd actually use it for its purpose. Ashley's situation isn't your emergency. Mom said family helps family. Family does help family. But help means supporting someone through a challenge, not enabling them to avoid consequences. He gestured to his workshop. I taught your mother and her brother how to use tools, how to fix things, how to be self-sufficient. Your Uncle Dan used those skills to build a career as a carpenter. Your mother used them to, well, she knows how to hang pictures at least. Point is, I gave them the same tools. What they did with them was their choice. We talked for hours that day. He told me stories about his own parents, about learning hard lessons, about the difference between helping and hurting. When I left, he handed me an envelope. Don't open this until you're moved into your dorm, he said. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note. For textbooks, furniture, or whatever else you need. Proud of you for standing your ground. Love, Grandpa. I cried in my car for 10 minutes before driving back to Jordan's place. August came faster than I expected. Move-in day at State University was chaos in the best way possible. Freshmen everywhere, parents helping carry mini fridges and desk lamps, that mixture of excitement and terror that comes with starting something completely new. I moved into my dorm alone. No family, no parents taking pictures, no one crying about their baby leaving home. Just me, my stuff, and my future. And honestly, it was perfect. My roommate was this kid named Blake from California who'd somehow ended up at a Midwest university. Cool guy, pre-med, obsessed with hiking and rock climbing. We got along immediately. No parents helping you move in? He asked as I hauled my last box up the stairs. Nah, they couldn't make it. Easier than explaining the truth. College was everything I'd hoped it would be. I'd declared a major in automotive engineering. Figured I might as well turn my years at Henderson's into an actual career. The classes were challenging but manageable. Made friends easily. Joined a club focused on restoring classic cars. Started dating this girl named Avery from my engineering class, who thought it was attractive that I could rebuild a transmission. I picked up a part-time job at a local auto shop near campus. The owner, Frank, was this old-school mechanic who appreciated that I actually knew what I was doing. Between that and being smart with my college fund money, I was doing fine financially. No debt, no stress, no family drama. The first semester flew by. I called Grandpa Jim every Sunday, sent him pictures of projects I was working on in my engineering classes. He'd send back feedback and encouragement, usually ending with, "Keep making me proud, kid." Thanksgiving came and went. I spent it with Blake's family, who'd flown out to visit him. They were normal in a way that felt almost alien to me. Parents who treated their kids like individuals, siblings who actually seemed to like each other, dinner conversations that didn't devolve into guilt trips or manipulations. Christmas break, I picked up extra shifts at Frank's shop, made good money, saved most of it, bought myself a decent laptop to replace my dying old one. Didn't go home, didn't call, Sent Grandpa Jim a card and a photo of my fall semester report card. Straight A's. His response: this is what happens when you invest in yourself instead of other people's bad decisions. Proud of you. I heard through the grapevine, Jordan's sister's social media stalking, that Ashley had her baby right before Christmas. A girl. She named her something trendy that I immediately forgot. The photos showed Ashley and Corey looking exhausted and overwhelmed, my parents hovering in the background of every shot, clearly doing most of the actual baby care. Mom apparently spent the holidays posting passive-aggressive Facebook statuses about family members who abandon their loved ones during important times, and the true meaning of family loyalty. Several relatives commented asking where I was, and Mom would respond with vague answers about me being busy with school and going through a phase. A phase. Like standing up for myself was the equivalent of teenage rebellion that I'd grow out of once I came to my senses. Jordan sent me screenshots sometimes. We'd laugh about the delusion. Ashley posted constantly about single mom life, even though she had Corey and our parents both helping, and how you find out who your real family is when times get tough. The irony of her complaining about people not helping after trying to steal my college fund was apparently lost on everyone but me. Spring semester was even better than fall. My GPA stayed strong, I got promoted to lead mechanic on weekends at Frank's shop, and Avery and I were getting serious. Life was good in a way it had never been before. That summer, I didn't go home. Got an internship with a manufacturing company that made automotive parts. The pay was decent, the experience was valuable, and it meant staying far away from my family and their drama. This pattern continued. Sophomore year, junior year, senior year. I went home exactly 0 times. Spent holidays with friends, with Avery's family, or sometimes just alone in my apartment. I'd moved off campus after freshman year with 3 other engineering students. Worked internships every summer. Graduated with honors and a 3.87 GPA. Job offers from 3 different automotive companies. In those 4 years, my parents tried to contact me maybe 15 times. Always the same theme. When are you going to stop this silly grudge? Ashley really needs her brother right now. It's time to let go of the past and be family again. Never an apology. Never acknowledgement of what they'd tried to do. Just demands that I get over it and come back so things could return to normal. Grandpa Jim came to my graduation. Sat in the audience with Avery's parents, cheered when I walked across that stage, took me out to dinner to celebrate. He was 82 years old and drove 4 hours just to watch me get my diploma. Your mother called me last week, he said over steaks that night. Wanted to know if I was going to your graduation. I told her I wouldn't miss it for the world. She asked if she could come with me. What did you say? I asked her if she'd even bothered to find out when or where graduation was. She hadn't. He cut into his steak. Riley, I'm not going to tell you how to handle your parents. That's your business. But I will say this. In my experience, people who refuse to acknowledge their mistakes will just make the same ones again. I thought about that a lot over the next few months. Started my first real job as an automotive engineer at a company that specialized in electric vehicle components. Good salary, great benefits, actually excited to go to work every morning. Moved into my own apartment, a real adult apartment with furniture I picked out and walls I could paint whatever color I wanted. Avery and I got engaged. She was finishing up her master's degree in mechanical engineering. We were talking about buying a house in a few years, maybe starting a family eventually. Normal adult life stuff. And I didn't think about my parents or Ashley at all. They were just people I used to know, characters from a past life that had nothing to do with my present. 5 years after I'd walked out of that house, everything changed. It started with a friend request on LinkedIn. Ashley. I ignored it. Then came a Facebook message from her. I'd kept a minimal profile just to stay connected with high school friends, but I'd blocked my family years ago. Somehow she'd gotten around it with a new account. The message was long, something about hoping we could reconnect and too much time has passed, and families shouldn't stay apart like this. I deleted it without reading the whole thing. 2 days later, I got a call at work. The receptionist patches it through before I can stop her. Riley Morrison, this is your mother. I should have hung up immediately. Instead, curiosity got the better of me. What do you want? Her voice was different, older, tired. Riley, please don't hang up. I need to talk to you. It's important. If this is another guilt trip about Ashley, it's not about Ashley. Well, it is. But can we please just meet? Just once? I promise I'll leave you alone after if that's what you want. Something in her voice made me hesitate. Not the manipulation I was used to, but actual desperation. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my office. Neutral territory, public place, easy escape route if needed. She'd aged more than 5 years should account for. Hair grayer, more lines around her eyes, shoulders slumped in a way that suggested she was carrying weight that wasn't physical. We sat down with our coffees in awkward silence. She kept opening her mouth to speak, then stopping, like she'd rehearsed this but forgotten her lines. "I'm not giving you money," I said finally, cutting through the tension. "Whatever this is about, if it involves money, the answer is no." She flinched. "That's fair. I deserve that." That threw me off. In all my years growing up, I'd never heard my mother admit she deserved anything negative. "Your father and I are in trouble," she said quietly. "Financial trouble. Bad trouble. We might lose the house." "Okay," I said carefully. "And you want what from me?" "I'm not asking for money. I just wanted you to hear this from me before you heard it from someone else." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "Ashley has been living with us since her daughter was born. She and Corey split up about 8 months after the baby came. She moved back home, temporarily, and never left. That's unfortunate, but not my problem." I know it's not. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm just trying to explain what happened." She took a shaky breath. "Over the past 5 years, Ashley has been taking money from us. A lot of money. At first, it was for the baby. Diapers, formula, doctor visits, things like that. But then it became everything. Daycare, preschool, clothes, toys, activities. Every month there was something new she needed. I waited. There had to be more. We didn't realize how much it was adding up to. Your father and I were both still working, and we thought we were helping, being good grandparents and parents. But Ashley wasn't just taking what we gave her. Mom's hands were shaking now. She had access to our bank accounts to pay for things for the baby. We thought we could trust her. She was taking out cash, buying things we didn't know about, using our credit cards and then paying only the minimums." "How much?" I asked. "Over 5 years?" She looked at her coffee. "About $180,000. I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. "You gave Ashley $180,000? "We didn't give it to her. She took it. Most of it we didn't even know about until last month when your father got called into HR. The company's downsizing. He's being forced into early retirement. When we sat down to look at our retirement accounts to figure out our finances." She trailed off. "Let me guess. Empty?" She nodded. "She'd gotten access somehow. Took nearly everything. We still don't understand how she did it technically, but the money's gone. When we confronted her, she said she needed it to provide for her daughter, and that we should have been supporting her better anyway. The audacity of this woman. My sister, not my mother. Though honestly, the apple didn't fall far from the tree." "That's unfortunate," I said again. "But I still don't understand why you're telling me this." "Because I realize now what we did to you was wrong." Her eyes were watering. "We tried to take your college fund for Ashley, and when you wouldn't let us, we told ourselves you were being selfish. But you weren't selfish. You were protecting yourself from becoming this." She gestured vaguely at herself. "We enabled Ashley her entire life, and now we're broke and about to lose our home because we never taught her that actions have consequences." I waited for the ask, the plea for help, the guilt trip about letting them become homeless. It didn't come. "I'm not asking you to help us," she said quietly. "I'm asking you to learn from our mistakes. Don't let anyone, not even family, take advantage of your hard work and success. You were right to leave. You were right about everything." She stood up, left a $10 bill on the table for the coffees, and walked out. I sat there for another 20 minutes, processing what had just happened. An apology, an actual admission of guilt. After 5 years of radio silence and occasional attempts at manipulation, my mother had actually acknowledged she was wrong. It felt weird. Not satisfying exactly, but something. I went back to work, told Avery about it that night over dinner. "So what are you going to do?" she asked. "Nothing. It's not my problem." A week later, Dad called my work line. The receptionist patched him through before I could stop her. "Riley, it's Dad. What do you want?" "Your mother told you about our situation. We need help. I know you said no money, but we're about to lose everything. The bank's foreclosing in 30 days. That's unfortunate. Riley, please. We're your parents. We made mistakes, but you told me working my way through school would build character." I cut him off. "You were right. It built so much character that I learned to stand on my own 2 feet. So here's my advice. Maybe foreclosure will build character for you too. Riley, and hey, maybe Ashley can get a job and help out. That builds character, right?" I hung up before he could respond. 2 days later, Ashley called from a blocked number. I made the mistake of answering. "You're really going to let Mom and Dad lose their house?" she screamed immediately. "No hello, no build-up. This is your fault. If you just helped out years ago instead of being selfish. Let me get this straight. You stole $180,000 from them, but I'm the selfish one. I didn't steal anything. I'm their daughter. They wanted to help me. Cool story. Good luck with that. I blocked the number. 3 weeks later, I got a call from a lawyer named David Chen. Turned out my parents had filed for bankruptcy, and the courts were investigating Ashley's withdrawals from their retirement accounts. Apparently, she'd forged some signatures to get access. We're building a fraud case, Chen explained. Your parents initially didn't want to press charges, but they don't have much choice now. The bankruptcy trustee is insisting. What does this have to do with me? You're listed as a beneficiary on some of their policies. Also, we found evidence that they attempted to access your college fund 5 years ago. That might be relevant to establishing a pattern of financial decisions. I gave him a statement about the college fund incident. Sent him copies of the account transfers I'd made when I moved the money. Didn't feel great being part of the case, but I wasn't going to lie for any of them either. The whole thing went to court about 4 months later. I didn't attend, but Jordan's sister kept me updated through her social media stalking. Apparently, Ashley showed up in a suit, looking like she was going to a job interview, trying to play the struggling single mom angle. Didn't work. Judge ruled she'd committed financial fraud. Sentenced her to 18 months probation, restitution of $180,000. Good luck with that. And banned her from having access to anyone else's financial accounts without a court order. My parents lost their house anyway. Too much debt, too little retirement money left. That's when things got really interesting. My parents moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a cheaper part of town. Dad got a part-time job at a hardware store. Mom started working retail at a department store. They were both in their early 60s, working jobs they probably thought they'd never have to do again. Ashley had to get an actual job. 2 jobs, actually. Morning shift at a coffee shop, evening shift at a grocery store. Her daughter was in public school now, and Ashley was learning what it felt like to work for every dollar. I heard all this through the grapevine. Didn't reach out, didn't offer help, just watched from a distance as they dealt with the consequences. About 6 months after the court case, I came home from work to find a package on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a brochure for Building Financial Independence, a character-building course for adults. Some community college program. There was a note from Mom. We're taking this class, learning what we should have learned decades ago. You were right about everything. We're sorry. The character-building line made me laugh. I showed it to Avery. My parents are taking personal finance classes. That's actually kind of sad. Yeah, but also kind of necessary. I threw the brochure away. Kept the note, though. Stuck it in a drawer. Life moved on. Avery and I got married at a courthouse with our friends there. Bought a house a year later. 3 bedrooms, garage I turned into a workshop. Got promoted at work to lead engineer on a major electric vehicle project. Started making serious money. Grandpa Jim came to visit every few months. He'd walk through my workshop, check out whatever project I was working on, tell stories about his own engineering days. He was 87 and still sharp as ever. When he passed away 2 years later, he left me his house and $50,000 in savings. The will specifically stated, to Riley, who made something of himself without needing anyone's permission or money, proud of you, kid. The funeral was the first time I'd seen my parents in almost 6 years. They looked older, tired, smaller somehow. Dad was wearing a suit that looked like it had been purchased at a thrift store. Mom's hair was completely gray now. They didn't approach me, just nodded from across the room at the service. Ashley wasn't there. Couldn't get time off work, apparently. After the burial, Mom caught me in the parking lot. Riley, can we talk? I looked at my watch. 2 minutes. We're doing better. Both working, paying bills. Your father's taking financial courses. I'm managing at the store now. Ashley's working 2 jobs, filed bankruptcy last year. She's in public housing. Good for you both. We're not asking for anything. Just wanted you to know we finally get it. Actions have consequences. Yeah, you do. She nodded slowly, handed me an envelope, and walked back to Dad's beat-up Honda Civic. I opened it in my car. Inside was a check for $1,000 and a note. From selling your grandfather's tools. He would have wanted you to have this. Mom and Dad. I deposited the check into a new college fund I'd opened. Figured someday maybe I'd have kids and they'd actually get to use their college money. 3 years later, Avery and I had our first kid. A boy. Named him James after Grandpa Jim. I sent my parents a birth announcement. Got a card back with congratulations and a $25 savings bond. Ashley sent a text. Heard you had a baby. Congratulations. I'm doing better now. 1 job, assistant manager. Sorry for everything. I read it. Saved the number under Ashley blocked. My parents kept sending holiday cards. Small gifts for James, a stuffed animal, a book, $20. Never pushed for visits. Just quiet gestures saying they were there if I wanted. Last month, Dad sent an email. Subject: Update. Your mother and I retired last year. Small pensions, social security, one-bedroom apartment. We're okay. Ashley's a store manager now. Better apartment. Her daughter's in middle school. Good grades. We learned to live small and not enable bad choices. Took 60-plus years to learn what you knew at 18. I showed Avery. Think you'll ever respond? Maybe, I said. When I feel like it, or maybe not. James is 3 now. Happy kid, loves helping me in the workshop. Avery's pregnant with our second. My career's going great. Life's good. Yesterday, I got a package in the mail. Inside was a wooden toy car, hand-carved, sanded smooth. There was a note in Dad's handwriting. Made this in a woodworking class at the community center. Thought James might like it. No pressure to respond. Just wanted him to have something his grandpa made. The car was actually well crafted. Solid wood, smooth wheels that actually turned. Attention to detail. I put it on a shelf in James's room. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.